In 2016, I found myself in a bit of a rough spot. On a particularly bad day, one of my friends invited me over to stay at his house. Not having much else to do, I packed up my laptop and a few necessities in a backpack and drove over to where he lived. When I got there, he didn't really ask me many questions, which I'm thankful for. No, instead he showed me a trailer for a really cool looking game that had just launched. It's a huge online multiplayer game where you can do whatever you want, he said. He asked me, do you want to download it so we can play it together? And that was the start of my journey into Black Desert Online. BDO was my first MMO. All I knew about the genre before that came from Sword Art Online, which, well, let's just say it had me intrigued. If you don't know anything about MMOs, they're basically games with persistent worlds, which means they don't go offline when you log out, right? The world keeps existing even if you're not there. At any point in time, you can find hundreds, if not thousands of players all roaming around the same space at the same time, regardless of whether you're there or not. Now this concept sounded absolutely magical to me. It was like I'd entered into a whole new world completely separate from the one that I live in. You know, Earth. But as I sunk hundreds of hours into it and tried to grind for endgame gear, the initial excitement I had over the potential of this world completely faded. What had once been an incredible journey of discovery in a fantasy universe had become a repetitive, meaningless grind. I spent so many hours fighting the same enemies in the same place over and over so I could earn money and EXP that only made my character marginally more powerful than they were before. Black Desert Online didn't respect me or my time. If it did, it wouldn't take months of grinding to gain a single level. It wouldn't base gear progression on RNG mechanics that could completely invalidate the hours of grinding I'd done beforehand. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not condemning all MMOs here as being a complete waste of time. I played Final Fantasy XIV just for the story content, and when I got what I wanted out of the game, I stopped. In my eyes, it only becomes a problem when a game doesn't uphold its end of the bargain. I'm fine sinking a ton of hours into one game if it continuously gives me fresh content like new story moments, more dungeons and raids, and other fun, interesting activities to participate in with my fellow players. But it's not worth my time to grind for the sake of grinding, to run toward a moving goalpost that doesn't have a reward waiting for me that's equal to the amount of time and effort I put in. At least give me a cookie. Many of the most popular games released in the last decade have been open world games. Some of them, like Red Dead Redemption 2, Elden Ring, and both of the Zelda games, are generational masterpieces, and yet I find that these are the exceptions of the genre rather than the rule. I've played a ton of open world games, some back to back, and what I found was after a while I couldn't even distinguish between different games anymore. Shadow of War, Horizon Zero Dawn, and Assassin's Creed Valhalla are three games from completely different franchises made by different studios, but to me, they don't feel that different from one another. They all have huge maps that are filled to the brim with clearly marked points of interest, towers to climb that reveal more of the world, a good amount of their side quests are uninspired fetch quests, and so on. I absolutely think that some of these games, like Shadow of War with its Nemesis system and Horizon with its absolutely beautiful world, have plenty of good elements in them, but the structure these worlds follow promotes artificial bloat and time wasting. Just making a big world and filling it with stuff doesn't make it worth exploring if that stuff isn't creative, challenging, or otherwise unique from the rest of the things you do in the game. The worst offender here is Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and yes, I do take every single chance I get to dog on this game. Not only does Odyssey have the typical open world structure where every part of the map is a copy-pasted nightmare, but it also contains one of the most malicious game design decisions I've ever come across. The developers purposely lowered the amount of experience you earn in-game to the point where in between certain story missions you will have to grind out side content for several hours because you'll be severely underleveled. But would you look at that? Ubisoft shareholders, I mean their financial department, I mean their grubby, greedy, crab-handed joke of a CEO, Yves Guillemot, graciously allowed us peasants access to an EXP booster you can buy in the in-game shop. Hats off to them, because I for one know I have always wanted a way to pay companies money to help me play less of a game that I just bought from them at full price. This game is a waste of time.